The UFC is home to some of the most incredible fighters and warriors. Israel, the last stylebender Adesanya, is definitely one of those guys. Yeah, the man lapped his division a few times, and even his fiercest rivals, including Cannonier and Whitaker, have nothing but respect for him. But what will become of the middleweights now that Poatan has taken the crown? Let's get into what Cannonier thinks about the whole thing. First up, he's had a big 2022. Cannonier has been a big name in the middleweight division for a while now, and the guy's been highly ranked for a while as well. He's fought all the top guys, and we aren't exaggerating. Yeah, he's taken on Whitaker, Adesanya, Brunson, and even Strickland. The guy's not ranked number 3 for nothing. 2022 has been particularly big for the fighter, and he capped off the year with 2 amazing wins. Yep, that's right. The number 3 ranked middleweight started the year off with a big win against Derek Brunson, and it was so good the UFC couldn't deny the man a title shot. Now, granted the guy lost to Adesanya, but guys, he went the whole 5 rounds, and he left it all out there in the octagon. The fight was a massive opportunity for the Killer Gorilla, and even though it didn't go well, his performance earned him some fans. Despite the loss though, this athlete kept his head high and ended 2022 with a huge win against Sean Strickland. He's right back in the running for another shot at the crown. But honestly, that last defeat against Izzy affected this top middleweight, and you can bet he had some things to say about it. We do love the UFC's interview game. They never fail to deliver some incredible fighter moments, even outside the ring. Anyway, let's get into what the guy had to say about the match. Following up, his thoughts on the Izzy match. Alright, there's no denying this middleweight has had an amazing year, as we've discussed already. But guys, arguably the most important fight of his career ended in a unanimous decision loss. The top contender got in there with the champ Adesanya, and don't get us wrong, he gave it his all, but Izzy was just too good. And at the end of a very technical fight, the stylebender won on all the judges' scorecards. Yeah, being Jared in that position must have sucked. He had talked before about how he was forced to fight because he had no money. Well, this was going to be the fight that would turn it all around. If he could just edge out a win against his rival, a lot of financial security would have come with that belt. But that didn't happen. No, the fight wasn't even close, and the Killer Gorilla lost about as badly as you can lose without being KO'd. You'd be right to think that stung, because the fighter opened up about how he was moments after the fight. The man went back to his locker room and cried out of frustration. But guys, don't think that means he's weak. In fact, for the people who do think like that, the number 3 ranked middleweight had some things to say. Stay tuned to find out. Following up, the Killer Gorilla pushes back against the stigma around men crying. Alright, we love fighters being aware of their mental health. We all loved when Paddy Pimblett took a moment after his win at UFC London to talk about men's mental health. Yeah, it's a real problem with the whole stigma around men, and especially some of these male fighters expressing their emotions. Well guys, Cannonier's not having it. He let us all know his opinions on the issue. When the guy revealed he'd been crying after his match with Izzy, he immediately followed that up with support for that being okay. Crying doesn't make a man, he said. And honestly guys, it's ridiculous how fighters who put it all on the line and deal with so much stress aren't allowed to shed a tear or two. The middleweight condenser feels the same, talking about how crying was just a natural process and that it was actually healthy to cry and let the frustration out sometimes. And we don't blame the guy for being frustrated. It was the biggest night of his career and he couldn't get the win against Izzy. That sort of thing would frustrate anyone. Also, guys, think about the amount of pressure these guys deal with from the fans as well. Imagine thousands of people telling you how bad you are on the internet right after a frustrating loss. Yeah, even the winners of these big fights aren't spared by the fan pressure. Just look at what happened to Adesanya, who won this fight.
And I'm coming in there with the same self-belief, the same confidence, the same...
Coming up, the number 3 middleweight isn't the only one who got emotional. Yeah, like we said, the pressure from the public doesn't even spare the winners, especially when fights don't end in lots of action. Izzy's been criticized a lot over his career for fighting too safely and coasting to victory. It's crazy. If you think that's ridiculous though, wait till you hear this next part. Now, it's gotten to the point that after UFC 276, the middleweight champ was also crying. Imagine winning and having to think about how the fans might be disappointed in your performance. Honestly, it's tough out there for these fighters, but we're glad they're at least not afraid to express their emotions. Now, don't pity him. He's one of the most dominant middleweights in history, and he's a tough cookie to crack. Besides, he's got the respect of the only people who matter, the other fighters. Even Cannonier, who was defeated at UFC 276, spoke out against the criticism the champ was getting. That's right, he pointed out the very obvious fact that when you've got 2 very technical high-level guys, you might not see them bleeding and taking some more reckless shots. That's just how it is. These fighters are too good to allow themselves to be pummeled. And even though the fight between these guys wasn't the most action-packed, it was a spectacle of technical work. Anyway, Jared's been making all kinds of interesting statements. He's commented on the state of the middleweights now that Poatan has dethroned Izzy.
I don't see you watching me and I've been watching you, but then when you run up on me, you act like you don't know me. Well, you know who I am now.
Next up, his reaction to Izzy versus Poatan. The middleweight division's been dominated by Adesanya for a while now, and it's not an exaggeration to say that he's lapped the division. We mean, the top guys in the middleweight division have all lost to this guy, and he's beaten some of the strongest ones, like Whitaker and Vettori, twice. Yeah, the way things were looking, we didn't see anyone taking the belt away from him. But hey, this is the fight game, and anything can happen. Alex Pereira took on the champ in 2022 after his win over Jared, and won a huge upset win. Yep, Izzy was winning the whole time, and then Poatan sniped him with an insane left hook to take the crown. A lot of fighters in the division, including the Killer Gorilla, have weighed in on this shakeup of the division. The whole division is suddenly open. Fighters who seemed like they'd never climb the insurmountable wall that was Izzy could now potentially be champions themselves. And don't believe us guys, but just know Jared Cannonier, the current number 3 of the division, seems to agree with us. Izzy's loss was bad for him, but it was good for the rest of the middleweights that he's been stopping again and again.
Just leaning back out of the range of those kicks. He's got to be very careful.
Following up, why the fighter thinks this shakeup is good for the middleweights. Alright, we've already told you guys that the number 3 ranked Killer Gorilla thinks Izzy's loss is good for the other fighters in the division, and we've also told you that this is because his rival can no longer stop some of these guys from reaching that belt. But let's look at how that actually works out. Think about it, the middleweight division is stacked, and for guys like Whitaker and Cannonier, no one else in the division stood a chance. Yeah, these two especially could have been champions so far if it hadn't been for Izzy having their numbers. But what about now that the seemingly invincible Izzy is gone? Yeah, suddenly the guy these men have to beat is Poatan, and no disrespect, but Alex has some holes in his game that Izzy didn't. We saw how Adesanya dominated Pereira on the ground. Yeah, you can bet guys like Whitaker and Vettori were salivating as they saw that. With Poatan, all these men have to do is take him to the canvas, and no matter how deadly he is on the feet, on the ground, both Vettori and Whitaker could destroy him. The Killer Gorilla realizes this too, and he's made sure to point it out. Plus, even for guys like Cannonier, Poatan's style seems much more manageable than Izzy's and his insane understanding of timing and distance. But guys, Cannonier didn't just stop there. Finally, he thinks this change is good for the division as a whole. These men all respect each other, and Jared wasn't celebrating his rival's downfall. No, he talked about how this wasn't personal, and Izzy's loss wasn't good because the other contenders wanted some sort of revenge. It was good because now that his dominance is broken, the middleweight division could go in any direction, and there's potential for a lot of guys to step up and shine. Yeah, the middleweight division could become the most entertaining one in the UFC this coming year, as we see all these top guys go after the belt with renewed energy. That's right, no matter how the division looks when everything settles down, right now, the whole MMA world is watching. We're all interested to see what's gonna happen, and for the first time in the last 3 years, names other than Izzy are getting a lot of attention in the division. And when we say anything could happen, we mean it. Pereira could lock down the division again, just like the OG did. Or we could see someone like Whitaker, Costa, Vettori, and of course Cannonier grabbing that belt. At this point, it's not even unrealistic to think that the belt could change hands multiple times. That's it for this one, guys. Do you guys have any predictions for how 2023 will go for the middleweight division? Make sure to let us know in the comments below. And as always, like and subscribe. See you guys in the next one.